The humans arrived at the crystalline station orbiting a neutron star feeling like insects under a magnifying glass. The Zerani's domain was built of blinding beauty, sharp planes of translucent crystal and floating shards that shimmered like distant stars. Dr. Ellie Voss squinted as she stepped onto the station's surface, where the light bent and refracted through the walls, casting rainbows onto her skin. She felt disoriented, as if she were intruding in a holy place. And to the Zerani, she probably was. She caught sight of Isaac, the team's unlikely emotional expert, standing a few paces ahead, a soft smile tugging at his lips as he took in the strange architecture. Isaac was an odd choice for the mission, musician who had somehow ended up as a bridge between worlds. There was something about him, though, something she couldn't put her finger on, a sensitivity that defied his simple label as empathy specialist. Ellie tried to focus on her footing as the translucent platform beneath her feet shimmered and hummed, responding to her steps in an eerie, unfamiliar way. A Zerani official approached, its crystalline body seemingly molded from the station itself. The alien's limbs were sleek and multifaceted, refracting the light into shifting hues of violet and blue. Its face, or what Ellie assumed was a face, was a smooth expanse of glass-like material, devoid of any discernible features. "You are, the humans," the Zerani stated, the voice resonating within the walls rather than echoing from its own form. It wasn't a question. Ellie felt a chill as it regarded her, and she had the unsettling feeling that they were being evaluated on some level far beyond her understanding. "Yes, we're here to help," she replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. Dr. Ellie Voss, neuroscientist and lead researcher. She glanced back at Isaac and the others, willing them to show a united front. Isaac's calm nod reassured her, even if the rest of the team looked as unnerved as she felt. The Zerani's form shimmered briefly, as if in response to her words. "Help is a generous term," it replied, and Ellie felt its contempt like a cold wind. "We have tried all reasonable methods. You are our last attempt, a variable, to satisfy our due diligence." Ellie bristled, though she tried to hide it. She was used to proving herself, used to pushing through skepticism, but the cold dismissal hit harder here, in the presence of something so alien and so obviously disdainful. "If you've exhausted all your options, maybe you need a fresh approach," Isaac said, stepping forward. His voice was light, almost nonchalant, but there was an underlying conviction that Ellie found surprising. The Zerani tilted its head, a movement that seemed more mechanical than expressive. "We are not interested in disruptive approaches," it replied. "The Star Beast is a sacred entity, an archive of our civilization's memories. Your methods lack structure, predictability." It paused, and Ellie imagined, with a shiver, that it was staring directly into her mind. "You may establish your lab. We will observe." They were led down a winding path of light and shadow, passing other Zerani who watched them with blank faces. Each one seemed to glide rather than walk, their bodies resonating with the energy of the station, as though they were part of the architecture itself. Ellie glanced at Isaac, who was walking with an easy, relaxed gait, humming softly to himself. "This place feels like a cathedral," he whispered to her as they moved out of earshot of their guides. "Beautiful, but cold. It's like they worship the idea of order, you know. Or maybe they just see us as an anomaly they need to tolerate," she muttered, trying to ignore the unnerving reflections in the walls that seemed to twist and turn as they passed. "Stay focused, Isaac. They're watching us." Their lab space was a sterile room, a perfect cube of reflective surfaces and strange, floating orbs that blinked as they entered. Ellie began setting up their equipment, adjusting for the odd atmosphere and different gravitational pull. She noticed how the Zerani's lack of regard for human physiology left their lab feeling almost hostile. The air was thin and cold, and the sterile, high-pitched hum that permeated the room grated against her nerves. They were not welcome here. They were tolerated. After a few hours of setting up, Isaac pulled out a small, unassuming violin from his bag. Ellie raised an eyebrow, but he shrugged. "Can't help it. I feel like the only way to reach this place is through something real, something human. She didn't argue. Watching him set up the violin felt grounding, a small piece of earth in an alien landscape. He played a soft melody, one he'd written himself, and the room seemed to grow warmer. The music was delicate, weaving between the strange reflections on the walls. Ellie watched, half mesmerized, as the melody expanded, filling the sterile silence with something raw and organic. A Zerani appeared in the doorway, its figure shimmering faintly as it observed them. Isaac continued playing, unperturbed. Ellie glanced between him and the Zerani, her pulse quickening as she saw the alien tilt its head, its body faintly resonating with the music's rhythm. "This is disruptive," the Zerani murmured, and Ellie heard a note of uncertainty in its voice. She couldn't help but smile. "It's different," she replied. "Sometimes different is what you need when nothing else works." The alien regarded her, and for a moment, she thought she saw a faint flicker of curiosity. "We have tried all reasonable methods," it repeated, but its tone lacked conviction. Ellie sighed, tired but resolute. "With respect, maybe that's the problem. Sometimes solutions don't come from reason. Sometimes they come from connecting to something, deeply." She paused, watching Isaac as he continued to play, lost in his own world, a world that was achingly familiar yet foreign here. The Zerani was silent, processing, and then it gave a nearly imperceptible nod. "You may proceed with your methods," it said, though Ellie caught an undertone of disapproval. "We will continue to observe." When the Zerani left, Ellie let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She looked at Isaac, who had stopped playing and was regarding her with an amused, almost defiant smile. "Was that wise?" she asked, though she felt a strange thrill of satisfaction. "Wise? No," Isaac replied, laughing softly. "But maybe that's why it worked." Ellie couldn't help but smile back, feeling the first flickers of hope. For all their advanced technology, the Zerani had locked themselves into a way of thinking, a rigid perspective that perhaps couldn't solve their problem. Humans, though, they were chaos. Unpredictable, often irrational, and just maybe, exactly what this dying creature needed. Ellie's gaze drifted to the crystal wall beyond, where the stars' light fractured and danced. Somewhere out there, the star beast lay in silence, waiting. Isaac's fingers hovered over the keys of a strange device they'd borrowed from the Zerani, a floating orb covered in crystal filaments that resonated when touched. He was trying to coax out a tune, a lullaby he'd hummed in the lab, which seemed to stir a faint echo from the star beast's energy. Isaac had a theory that music might bridge the gap between them and the creature, that its rhythm and emotion could somehow break through the impasse that reason and science had failed to cross. Ellie watched from across the lab, alternating between taking notes and glancing warily toward the doorway, where she knew the Zerani were likely observing. They were ever present, never intrusive but always hovering, watching the humans with expressions she was learning to interpret, a slight tilt of their head, the way the light fractured in their crystalline bodies whenever they felt irritation, or, lately, suspicion. Isaac played a single note, low and vibrating, and held it, his gaze fixed on the orb. He pressed down on the filaments, and the orb began to emit a soft, humming tone in return. He leaned in, his brow furrowed in concentration, as if he were having a silent conversation with the device. "That's it," he murmured to himself, adjusting his pressure. The hum shifted, matching the cadence of his melody. The filaments glowed faintly, responding as though they understood him. A soft chime sounded from above, and one of the Zerani, clad in iridescent bands of light, entered the lab. Its tone was unreadable, a quality Ellie was finding increasingly familiar. "What is your intention with this sound?" it asked, the word foreign and slightly condescending. Isaac straightened and turned to face the alien, unperturbed. "We're hoping to communicate with the star beast. Not in the way you might think of communication, no words, no language, but an exchange of feeling. Maybe even comfort." "Comfort?" The Zerani's voice held a flicker of incredulity. Ellie could feel the alien's confusion radiating in the form of slight pulses from its crystalline limbs. You assume that this being requires comfort. That it is anything beyond its purpose. Isaac smiled gently. Maybe that's just it. We don't see it as just a tool or repository. It's alive, and maybe all it wants is to be seen, not just used. The Zerani's reflective skin darkened slightly, a muted indigo hue that Ellie had come to associate with something like skepticism. Our methods are based on structure and order, it replied. Your feeling-based techniques lack precision, rendering them insufficient. Ellie, having listened to enough, spoke up, her voice sharper than she'd intended. With respect, your structured methods are precisely what hasn't worked so far. If they had, we wouldn't be here. The Zerani regarded her in silence, and she wondered if her defiance was a mistake. But instead of leaving, the alien stepped closer, its form refracting the station's dim light. Proceed, it said quietly. Ellie thought she saw curiosity, or something close to it, ripple across its face. We will continue to observe. As the Zerani glided from the room, Isaac leaned toward Ellie, a spark of triumph in his eyes. We're getting to them. They may not admit it, but they're starting to wonder if we know something they don't. Ellie exhaled, letting some of her tension dissipate. They still see us as unpredictable variables. But that might be exactly why we're here. Isaac resumed his melody, fingers dancing over the orb's filaments, and this time, the music was clearer, more resonant. The soft notes reverberated through the lab, creating a soothing, almost hypnotic effect. Ellie closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the music rather than analyze it, letting it wash over her like waves on a shore. She felt herself being drawn to the star beast, the immense presence that lay just outside their reach. The music shifted, and Ellie's mind filled with an image, a vast, looming figure suspended in a void, silent and ancient, surrounded by cold starlight. She felt a pang of sorrow, sharp and inexplicable, like the sting of loss. She opened her eyes, surprised to see tears pricking at the corners. Did you feel that? She whispered to Isaac. He nodded, his eyes wide. It's reaching out, he said, his voice a mixture of awe and apprehension. I don't know if it's conscious or just responding, but there's something there. At that moment, the star beast's pulse, usually faint and barely detectable, suddenly intensified. A deep vibration resonated through the station, causing the lights to flicker. Ellie gasped as a faint, mournful sound filled the room, like a distant song, a song of unimaginable age and loneliness. Isaac played louder, matching the star beast's rhythm, his face alight with concentration. The two melodies interwove, forming a strange, haunting harmony that felt like a conversation across an unbridgeable distance. Ellie watched, transfixed, as the room seemed to come alive, the reflections in the walls shifting in time with the music. She sensed something awakening, something that had been dormant for far too long. The Zerani returned, their crystalline forms vibrating subtly, almost as if they too were affected by the music. This is impossible, one of them murmured, its tone betraying a hint of wonder. You have elicited a response from the star beast? Isaac didn't stop playing, but Ellie turned to face the alien, her voice soft yet firm. We think it's listening. Maybe even trying to communicate. This creature isn't just some machine. It's sentient. It feels. The Zerani fell silent, their bodies glowing faintly in unison. Ellie realized they were processing this revelation, trying to understand a concept that didn't fit within their framework of logic and structure. Isaac slowed the melody, allowing the last notes to fade. The silence that followed was heavy, charged with something profound. Ellie could feel it, a connection, fragile but real, stretching across the divide between human and alien, between life and memory. The Zerani's leader stepped forward, its crystalline face catching the dim light. If what you say is true, if it truly has desires, needs beyond its purpose, then perhaps our understanding has been insufficient. Ellie sensed the struggle in its words, the effort it took to accept that something as sacred as the star beast might need more than maintenance, that it might long for connection. "We're all learning here," she replied, a smile breaking through her exhaustion. "But if we don't start by seeing it as more than just an archive, then we've already failed." Isaac set the orb down and joined her, his gaze soft but unwavering as he addressed the Zerani. "Sometimes," he said, "the most important thing is to show someone they're not alone. That's why we're here. Not to analyze it, but to help it feel understood." The Zerani's form shifted, its crystalline body glowing softly, almost as if it were humbled. "Then proceed," it said, stepping back, granting them space. "We will observe, not to intervene, but to learn." As the Zerani left, Ellie felt a strange exhilaration. They had won a small but vital victory, breaking through the alien barrier of logic and structure with something raw, something deeply human. She glanced at Isaac, who offered her a weary but triumphant grin. For the first time since they'd arrived, she felt a glimmer of hope. They had taken the first step, one that would allow them to reach the Star Beast, not with data, but with compassion. The hum of the Star Beast grew stronger, pulsing through the crystalline walls like the beat of an ancient heart. Ellie and Isaac stood together in the dim glow of the lab, faces tense as they felt the vibrations intensify. It was as if the creature had finally awakened from its long sleep, reaching out with an urgency that filled the space around them with a palpable, almost electric tension. Each pulse resonated with an intensity that felt both thrilling and ominous, a call that was growing too powerful to ignore. Ellie leaned closer to the station's console, trying to make sense of the data streaming across the display. The readings were strange, unpredictable spikes and surges that defied every model she'd created. "It's destabilizing," she murmured, her voice laced with worry. "Whatever we've stirred up, it's pushing the Starbeast's core to a breaking point. If we don't stabilize it." Isaac's hand closed gently over her shoulder, steadying her. "We can't give up now, Ellie. We've finally made contact. It needs us." A group of Zerani appeared at the doorway, their crystalline bodies flickering with an uneasy violet hue. Their leader, the same Zerani who had watched them with quiet skepticism, stepped forward. Its voice, usually even and detached, trembled slightly. "The Starbeast's energy levels are reaching critical instability. If this continues, it will collapse, and the ensuing release will destroy the station, and everyone aboard," Ellie finished, feeling the weight of the words settle like a stone in her chest. Isaac turned to the Zerani, his gaze fierce and unyielding. "We can help stabilize it, but we'll need to be inside its core chamber. We can't just watch from here, we need direct contact." The Zerani leader recoiled, the crystals along its limbs bristling with shock. "You propose to enter the Starbeast's core? That chamber is sacred and dangerous, no one has dared to enter it." Ellie held her ground. "Sacred or not, if we don't act, you'll lose everything the Starbeast has safeguarded for your civilization. Your memories, your history, your legacy, gone in an instant." She took a breath, steadying herself. "We've spent all this time trying to understand it. We're the best chance you've got." The Zerani hesitated, glancing among themselves, their bodies flickering in muted, uncertain patterns. At last, their leader gave a reluctant nod. "Very well. You have permission to enter the core chamber, if you believe it will prevent catastrophe." Isaac's face was pale but resolute. He offered Ellie a tense smile. "Guess we're going into the belly of the beast, huh?" She managed a wry grin. "Wouldn't be our first time." But despite her attempt at levity, she could feel the weight of what lay ahead pressing down on her like a leaden cloak. This was no experiment, this was a plunge into the unknown, and she had no illusions about the risks. The path to the core was a spiraling corridor lined with pulsing, luminous panels that seemed to respond to their presence, throbbing with a faint warmth. The Zerani who accompanied them remained silent, guiding them through a maze of passages that twisted and coiled like a serpent. Ellie was acutely aware of the tension, of the fear that lingered in the air like a bitter aftertaste. For all their poise and control, the Zerani were terrified. Finally, they reached the entrance to the core chamber, a vast, arched doorway covered in intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the dim light. The Zerani leader halted, gesturing toward the chamber with a solemn nod. "We can go no further. This is a journey only you can undertake." Ellie exchanged a look with Isaac, who nodded, his expression unreadable. They stepped forward, crossing the threshold together. Inside, the core chamber was bathed in a dim, golden glow. Towering columns of crystalline structures rose up around them, each one pulsing with the star beast's energy. The air was thick with a charged silence, a sense of anticipation that prickled along Ellie's skin. At the heart of the chamber lay the star beast itself, a massive, coiled presence suspended in the air, its form barely visible beneath layers of swirling, iridescent energy. Ellie felt a surge of awe and fear. The creature was unlike anything she'd ever seen, its body a strange fusion of organic and cosmic, like a serpent woven from stardust and plasma. Isaac's voice was soft, reverent. "It's beautiful." Ellie nodded, momentarily lost for words. But as she watched, she felt the star beast's energy flicker, its light dimming as if it were struggling to maintain its own existence. She knew, in that instant, that they didn't have much time. "Isaac," she whispered urgently. "It's fading. We need to act now." He nodded, closing his eyes and extending his hands toward the creature, as if trying to bridge the gap between them. He began to hum, the same melody he'd played earlier, but this time it was rawer, more intimate. The sound seemed to resonate within the chamber, blending with the star beast's pulses, creating a harmony that was both haunting and powerful. Ellie felt a sudden surge of warmth, a sensation that flowed from the star beast into her, filling her with memories that weren't her own, fragments of lives lived eons ago, glimpses of stars long since extinguished. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotion and memory that threatened to drown her. Isaac's voice cut through the deluge, steady and grounding. "Stay with me, Ellie. Focus on the connection." She took a shuddering breath, forcing herself to concentrate. Together, they formed a bridge, a fragile link that stretched between their minds and the star beast's consciousness. She could feel its pain, its isolation, a loneliness that spanned centuries. It wasn't just a creature, it was a soul, burdened by memories it could no longer bear alone. In that moment, Ellie understood what needed to be done. She reached out, pouring her own memories into the star beast, sharing fragments of her life, moments of joy and sorrow, hopes and fears. She felt Isaac doing the same, opening himself up, offering his own experiences as a balm to the creature's wounded spirit. The star beast responded, its energy surging, the chamber filling with light as it absorbed their memories, weaving them into its own. Ellie could feel the burden lifting, the pain easing, replaced by a profound sense of relief. The star beast's pulses grew stronger, steadier, filling the chamber with a warmth that was almost tangible. But then, a sudden jolt ran through the chamber, a shockwave that knocked them both to the ground. Ellie looked up, heart pounding, as she saw the star beast's energy fluctuating wildly, its form shimmering like a mirage. "It's too much," Isaac shouted, his voice strained. "We need to pull back, or we'll destabilize it completely." Ellie hesitated, torn between the urge to continue and the fear of causing irreparable harm. But she knew he was right. She forced herself to sever the connection, gasping as the memories receded, leaving her feeling hollow and exposed. The star beast's form wavered, then stabilized, its light softening to a steady, gentle glow. Ellie could feel its gratitude, a silent acknowledgement of the gift they'd shared. She reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of its energy field, feeling a warmth that was both comforting and bittersweet. Isaac placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze filled with a quiet pride. "We did it," he murmured, his voice barely more than a whisper. Ellie nodded, feeling a surge of relief and exhaustion. They had risked everything, and somehow, against all odds, they had succeeded. As they turned to leave, the Starbeast's light followed them, a gentle pulse that felt like a heartbeat, a reminder of the bond they had forged, a testament to the resilience and compassion that defined them. They walked back down the corridor, side by side, their steps unsteady but filled with purpose. The Zerani waited for them at the entrance, their expressions a mixture of awe and reverence. Ellie met their gaze, her heart swelling with pride. Humanity had shown its true strength, not through force or intellect, but through empathy and courage. Isaac's voice lingered in Ellie's mind as they left the Starbeast's core, his quiet words echoing with the weight of everything they had just endured. The Starbeast's steady glow followed them, casting faint golden light onto the crystalline walls, as if it, too, wanted to remain close. It felt like the creature was watching them go, its silent gaze filled with the mixture of longing and gratitude that Ellie had sensed in their final moments of connection. She reached up to rub her temples, still feeling the shadow of memories, like whispers that hadn't quite left her mind. As they stepped back into the main corridor, the Zerani were waiting, their luminous forms clustered together, radiating a gentle, blue-tinged glow. Their leader approached, the light within its crystalline body flickering with a cautious curiosity. Ellie felt the familiar pulse of anxiety as the Zerani's gaze landed on her, intense and unreadable. The leader's voice reverberated softly, with a tone that surprised her. "We have been observing," it said, each word measured. "And we have felt something. The Starbeast's energy has stabilized, and yet we sense a change, a warmth that is unfamiliar to us." Ellie exchanged a quick look with Isaac, and he gave her a reassuring nod. She took a steadying breath, addressing the Zerani leader as she tried to put into words what they had experienced. It wasn't just about the energy or the data. The Starbeast, it carries memories, yes, but it also carries emotions. Burdens, fears, maybe even dreams. It's lived for so long with those memories, it felt isolated. All we did was share some of ourselves, let it know that it wasn't alone. The Zerani leader was silent, the facets of its crystalline face reflecting fractured light. Ellie thought she saw something softening in its gaze, an uncertainty that was almost childlike. "You shared yourselves," it repeated, the words laced with wonder. "We did not know such a thing was possible." Isaac stepped forward, his voice warm and unguarded. "We all need connection. The Starbeast is no different, and neither are any of us. Sometimes understanding is more important than logic." The Zerani's light grew faint, almost as if it were shrinking from the thought. Ellie sensed the struggle within it, the resistance to an idea so alien that it defied everything the Zerani held sacred. But there was something else, too, a yearning, a curiosity that hadn't been there before. She realized that, for the first time, they had planted a seed of doubt in the Zerani's certainty. "Our ways are structured, logical," the leader said, its tone faltering. "Our existence is defined by order, by the preservation of knowledge. But your methods, your emotions, have revealed something we could not have anticipated. Perhaps, we have been limited by our own beliefs." Ellie's heart swelled with pride. This was what they had come here to do, what humanity was best at, opening doors that had once seemed forever closed, reaching out with an empathy that defied reason. She looked at Isaac, whose face was a mixture of exhaustion and relief, and felt a surge of gratitude for his courage, his willingness to lead with his heart even in the face of doubt. "We don't need to have all the answers," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Sometimes it's enough to be willing to see things differently, to be open to the unknown." The Zerani leader regarded her for a long moment, and then, in an uncharacteristically vulnerable gesture, it inclined its head, almost as if bowing. "You have shown us a path we did not know existed. This connection, this sharing, it is beyond anything we could have conceived. You have expanded our understanding of existence." There was a profound silence that filled the corridor, a silence that was both humbling and powerful. Ellie felt the weight of the moment, the awareness that they had shifted something fundamental in the Zerani's perspective. She reached out, her hand brushing the cool, crystalline surface of the nearest wall, feeling a strange, comforting warmth pulsing through it, as if the station itself had absorbed some of the starbeast's renewed energy. Isaac's voice broke the silence, soft but resonant. "So, what now? Will you let the starbeast continue as it has been, or will you let it share its knowledge freely?" The Zerani leader's light flared brighter, casting a gentle glow onto its companions, who seemed to be murmuring amongst themselves, their bodies resonating in harmonious patterns. "We will adapt," it said, the words slow but filled with conviction. "We will learn to listen, as you have. The starbeast's knowledge belongs not only to us but to the cosmos. Perhaps, it is time for us to share what we have guarded so fiercely." Ellie felt a rush of exhilaration, a joy that filled her to the core. This wasn't just a victory for the starbeast or for themselves, it was a victory for all those unseen bonds that connected every being, human and alien alike. She could see it in the way the Zerani moved, the way their light shifted, a soft radiance that felt almost hopeful. The station's hum changed subtly, a warm resonance that echoed through the hallways. Ellie realized it was the starbeast's pulse, spreading throughout the structure, like a heartbeat shared among them all. She closed her eyes, feeling the connection, the unspoken understanding that linked them in that moment. The starbeast was no longer a silent guardian, but a living, breathing part of them, a soul that had found companionship in the most unlikely of places. As they began their journey back to the transport that would take them home, Ellie felt a bittersweet pang of farewell. She looked back, catching a final glimpse of the starbeast's gentle glow, and thought she felt its presence, a silent thanks that resonated within her. She knew, in her heart, that they had given the creature something far more precious than their memories, they had given it hope. The Zerani escorted them to the docking bay, their forms glowing with a quiet reverence. The leader paused, inclining its head one last time. "You have our gratitude. You have not only saved the starbeast but have shown us a new way to see ourselves." Isaac smiled, his hand resting on Ellie's shoulder. "We all have something to learn from one another. Sometimes it just takes a little leap of faith." As they boarded the transport, Ellie felt a warmth settle over her, a quiet satisfaction that filled her like a gentle flame. They had come as strangers, outsiders, barely tolerated variables in a culture that saw them as reckless. But they were leaving as something more, as friends, perhaps, or at least as allies in the vast, unknowable expanse of the universe. The station receded as they drifted away, its crystalline structure gleaming like a distant star, its light mingling with the pulse of the neutron star. Ellie watched in silence, her hand pressed against the glass, feeling the strange yet beautiful weight of what they had accomplished. They had done more than save a life. They had bridged a divide that once seemed insurmountable, proving that even in the cold depths of space, empathy and connection could span any distance. As the stars stretched out before them, Ellie knew that this was only the beginning, of what, she couldn't yet say. But she felt the certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them with open hearts, ready to bring light to even the darkest corners of the cosmos.